The universe of Warhammer 40k is a vast, sprawling expanse of suffering and survival. The Emperor's light touches only the smallest fraction of the Imperium's infinite expanse, casting all else into shadow. Beyond the ever-burning glow of the Astronomicon, life is an uncertain dance of bloodshed, betrayal, and desperate pursuit of power. But what happens when the light of the Emperor flickers, when those who serve him are left to fend for themselves in the dark corners of the galaxy? What happens when the Imperium's underbelly, its black markets, its shadowy dealings, its unseen forces come to the fore? What happens when the forgotten, the lost, and the damned rise from the depths of the ever-spiraling abyss of war, corruption, and chaos? Before you proceed, if you're intrigued by the murkier, darker corners of the 41st millennium, where power and cruelty reign in equal measure, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Imperium Unveiled. This is just the beginning of uncovering the most harrowing truths in Warhammer 40k, ones that are often hidden away, tucked beneath layers of propaganda and dread. So, stay with us and journey deep into the heart of the Imperium's darkest secrets. The Imperium of Man is an empire of order. At least, that's the image it projects. The Imperium is a vast, sprawling machine built on the bones of countless worlds and held together by the fragile threads of faith, discipline, and iron-fisted rule. It is a realm where laws are unyielding, and where those who do not obey, those who do not comply, find themselves punished or purged without mercy. But there is another side to the Imperium, a side that few can see, a side that thrives in the shadows, where the Emperor's gaze does not reach, and where the brutal weight of imperial law is nothing more than a fleeting whisper on the wind. In the underworld of the Imperium, the black market reigns supreme. It is a realm built on corruption, desperation, and greed. It is a place where the rules of the Emperor are bent and broken, where contraband flows freely, and where power is exchanged in dark alleys and hidden corners. The black market is not just a collection of illicit goods and services. It is the lifeblood of a galaxy where the supply of necessary materials is never enough to meet demand. For many, it is the only way to survive. Trade in the underworld is often conducted in the most dangerous of circumstances. In the hive cities of Necromunda, entire gangs control the flow of promethium, weapons, and slaves. The streets are a battlefield, a place where the strong prey on the weak and where the rule of law is a distant memory. The underworld here is a brutal existence, one where loyalty is a currency and betrayal is an inevitability. But even in the chaos of Necromunda, the black market finds a way to thrive. For those who are not born in the brutal depths of such a world, the black market becomes a desperate necessity. In the fringes of the galaxy, the black market offers solace to those who cannot afford to survive by legitimate means. A merchant on a distant world may need access to rare pharmaceuticals to keep his family alive. Or perhaps a miner trapped in a collapsing shaft needs a weapon to defend himself against the predators lurking in the darkness. These people turn to the black market because the Imperium offers no other recourse. They seek out the smuggler or the fence, the underworld merchant who deals in stolen goods or forbidden technologies for a chance at survival in an unforgiving galaxy. And then there are the people who feed the beast. These are the individuals who make the black market possible. The smugglers, the criminals, the corrupt officials. They are the unseen forces that keep the wheels of the underworld turning. For them, it is a way of life, a means of survival in a galaxy where the Imperium's authority does not stretch far enough to impose control on the fringes. It is a world where money and power have replaced morality, and where betrayal is as common as breath. The Imperial Guard, noble in their sacrifice, are often the ones sent to quash the black market. However, they are not immune to its temptations. On the battlefields of war-torn planets, the officers and soldiers of the Astra Militarum can find themselves desperate for supplies, whether it be food, medical supplies, or even better weaponry to fight the endless hordes of Xenos and traitors. When the standard supply chains break down, they turn to the black market, trading with criminals, renegade factions, or even Xenos to survive. They're not immune to the same temptations that plague the civilians they are sworn to protect. The importance of the black market cannot be overstated. It is not merely a criminal enterprise. It is the hidden pulse of the Imperium's survival. From the mighty battlefields to the smallest hive cities, the black market provides the resources, the weapons, and the means of survival that the Imperium's bureaucracy cannot. It is the unspoken backbone that allows life in the far-flung reaches of the galaxy to continue, even when the Emperor's light is but a faint and distant star in the sky. But for all the power it grants to those who control it, the black market is a double-edged sword. It is a place of constant danger. The corruption it breeds feeds on itself, growing ever more insidious, twisting the hearts and minds of those who dare to engage in its trade. The transactions, once simple and straightforward, grow more complex, and soon they are bound in a web of debt, betrayal, and violence. Those who dabble too long in the black market often find themselves lost, consumed by it, drawn into the endless cycle of power struggles and greed that defines its very nature. It is a world where loyalty is scarce and trust is a commodity no one can afford. And so the cycle continues. The black market is not a solution to the Imperium's problems. It is a symptom of them. It is the result of an empire that stretches too far, too thin, and whose rule is maintained not through love and loyalty, but through fear, force, and indifference. Those who live in the underworld of the Imperium are the forgotten. They are the lost, the desperate, and the forsaken. And yet, despite the horrors they face, the black market endures. A constant reminder that in a galaxy as vast and uncaring as this one, no one is ever truly safe from the desperate drive for survival. The Emperor may be the guiding light of humanity, but his empire is a shadow of what it once was. The black market is proof of that, for it thrives where the Emperor's gaze does not reach. It is in the dark corners of the galaxy, where desperation and depravity rule, that the true nature of the Imperium can be seen. Not in the grand halls of the Imperial Palace or the shining spires of Terra, but in the endless, chaotic underworld of those who live and die in the shadows of the Emperor's might. The black market's presence is not confined solely to the lower levels of hives or the broken ruins of forgotten worlds. It exists in every corner, every darkened passageway of the Imperium, threading its way through the very fabric of the galaxy. From the underbelly of a world teeming with life, to the desolate expanse of a barren moon where nothing but dust and despair exist. The black market touches all. It is the hidden currency of survival, of power, and of death. In the seemingly untouched worlds of the imperial aristocracy, the black market thrives beneath the luxurious veneer of wealth. Here, the lords and ladies of the highest echelons of imperial society play the deadly games of politics, corruption and self-preservation. Their estates gleam with the finest artifacts, their halls echo with laughter and indulgence. But beneath their gilded walls, forbidden goods flow freely. For even the elite must rely on the black market to maintain their power. And no power is more fragile than that which is built on fragile alliances and the delicate strings of wealth. Weapons of unparalleled destruction, Xeno's artifacts of immense power, ancient texts from the age of the dark age of technology. These are the objects of desire for the powerful. But these are not goods that can be acquired through standard imperial channels. These are the treasures of the forbidden, the cursed, and the heretical. Goods that could easily bring the full wrath of the Emperor's justice crashing down on any who dared to possess them. So they turn to the underworld, to those who deal in the dark, to the criminals who weave in and out of the shadows with their deadly goods. In these hidden dealings, the rich are no less vulnerable than the beggars in the streets. Their desperation may come dressed in silks and gold, but it is no less rich. The hunger for power, the fear of losing it, and the lengths they will go to retain it. These are universal truths that bind even the most noble houses of the Imperium to the black market. For what is wealth, if not the ability to control others? And what is power, if not the ability to control the flow of resources to bend the galaxy to one's will? At the same time, those who survive within the black market are often trapped in its vice-like grip. To those who operate at the higher echelons of this underworld, the stakes are always higher, and the risks are ever greater. Many find themselves bound to the illicit dealings they have made, caught in a spiral of deceit, blackmail, and betrayal that spirals ever deeper. The exchange of goods is often the least of the bargains struck in the black market. It is the promises, the debts, the sacrifices. These are the true currency. Once the chains of loyalty and obligation are fastened, there is no escape from the darkness. But for the majority of those who live in the shadow of the black market, survival is all that matters. They do not concern themselves with the grand schemes or the play of power that the aristocracy thrives on. They are the foot soldiers, the low-born masses, who scrape and struggle for each breath, each sliver of hope. For them, the black market is not just a place of illicit exchange. It is their only means of survival in an imperium that cares little for their existence. The day-to-day life of the common man in the depths of the Imperium is one of misery. The cold metal walls of hive cities enclose them, towering above, a reminder of their insignificance in the grand, indifferent machine of the Imperium. The constant hum of machinery, the choking smog that fills the air, the clatter of gears, and the dull thrum of energy in the veins of these urban behemoths. All of it serves as a reminder of the empire's oppression. Here, in the lower levels of the hive, the black market thrives. It is a place where the desperate come to barter, where the broken and beaten seek the fleeting warmth of a bargain that might see them survive another day. For these people, the black market is not a choice. It is a necessity. The Imperium has forgotten them. Their lives are worth less than the promethium that powers the manufactorums, and their survival is only guaranteed by their willingness to trade whatever they have left in exchange for food, medicine, or weapons. In these dark corners of the galaxy, they are not citizens, not even subjects of the Emperor. They are commodities, pawns in a vast, uncaring game. And in this environment, new players rise. These are the entrepreneurs of the underworld, the smugglers who grow fat from the suffering of others. They are not mere criminals. They are visionaries, business people who understand the true workings of the galaxy's economy. Where the Imperium offers no hope, they offer a way out, a means of survival. Their goods are varied: weapons, unregistered ships, dangerous Xenos technologies, stolen relics, and perhaps most horrifyingly, human lives. They traffic in slaves, in bodies, in souls, providing the dark services that the Empire ignores or cannot provide. But even among these criminals, there are those who seek more than just money. There are those who see the black market as a means to power. They wish to control entire sectors, entire planets. They plot, scheme, and manipulate, using the Imperium's apathy to grow their influence. They are often the unseen hands behind the black market's operations, pulling the strings from the shadows, ensuring that the wheel turns and that their pockets are always full. And what of the consequences of this underground empire? What happens when the black market grows too large, too influential? The Imperium's authorities, those entrusted with maintaining the Emperor's will, find themselves increasingly challenged. They cannot ignore the black market forever. They cannot stop it either. The vastness of the Imperium is simply too great, and the desire for forbidden goods is too strong. Eventually, those in power are forced to make deals, to negotiate with the very criminals they were once sworn to destroy. In the process, they compromise their own morals, becoming part of the corruption that they were once tasked with eliminating. The black market, then, is more than just a place of illegal trade. It is a reflection of the Imperium's own decay, a mirror showing the cracks in the foundation of a galaxy-spanning empire. The more it spreads, the more it forces those in power to confront their own inability to control the universe they claim to command. And as the black market's influence continues to grow, so too does the despair of those trapped within it. For in the end, the real question is not whether the Imperium can stop the black market, but whether it can stop the rot within its own soul. The black market is a symptom, not a cause. It is a reflection of the deepest flaws in the Emperor's empire, flaws that even his eternal light cannot hope to extinguish. The black market's grip, so tight around the throat of the Imperium, extends its influence even into the very heart of the imperial war machine. In the conflict-riddled worlds of the Astra Militarum, amidst the chaos of frontline battles and unending sieges, there are deals to be struck, lives to be bartered, and survival to be negotiated. The armies of the Imperium, those stalwart sons and daughters who fight and die in the name of the Emperor, are often forced to rely on these very networks when standard supply lines fail. Ammunition runs low, food becomes scarce, and the Emperor's finest soldiers, sent to the front lines to die for the Imperium, find themselves at the mercy of the black market, far from the Emperor's glory. It is in these moments of desperation, on war-torn planets where the screams of battle echo in the air, that the black market shines brightest. Soldiers who once held the Emperor's light as the guiding force of their very existence must now bow to a darker truth. Without the black market, their survival is not guaranteed. A supply officer with the right connections can secure crates of illicit weaponry, foodstuffs long past their expiration date, or even a rare medicinal compound that could save an entire battalion. With one trade, entire regiments are sustained. With another, a soldier's life is extended for another few weeks of hellish war. For every victory, for every mission accomplished, there is a price paid, and it is the black market that collects. Within the crumbling ruins of planets under siege, the black market thrives where nothing else can. Imperial officials, commanders of the Astra Militarum, may turn a blind eye to the illicit goods flowing through the supply lines. For even they know the truth. The Emperor's empire cannot sustain itself through purity alone. It requires corruption to function, to continue the cycle of war. The Imperium's vast, sprawling bureaucracy cannot possibly manage the endless logistical needs of its armies, so the underworld steps in where the Imperium falters. With a price tag on every soul, every soldier, the black market becomes indispensable to the war effort, despite the moral cost. The ramifications of this are immense. As much as the black market fuels the Imperium's endless wars, it simultaneously fosters the decay of its core principles. It is an undeniable paradox. An empire that prides itself on the purity of its faith, its devotion to the Emperor, and the sanctity of its crusades is built, in part, on the very corruption it claims to abhor. The Imperium's war machine, with all its glorified armies and esteemed generals, is stained by the blood money flowing through the hands of criminals, smugglers, and traitors. In this twisted game, survival is the only law, and those who can't adapt to the changing tides of power, both military and illicit, are the ones left to die in the dust of forgotten worlds. Yet, it is not just soldiers who are caught in the black market snare. It is the common people of the Imperium who suffer the most. They are the ones who wake every day in the dark recesses of the galaxy, working in factories, manning the manufactorums, and toiling under the rule of an uncaring system. They are the lifeblood of the Imperium, and they too must turn to the black market to survive. For those who live in the lower levels of hive cities, the black market is not an optional choice. It is a necessity. Hollow-eyed workers, caked in grime, sweat drenching their clothes as they labor for the Emperor's tithe, do not have the luxury of high-minded ideals or noble causes. They are too busy scraping by, day after day, just to make sure they have enough food to feed their families. They trade in everything they have, family heirlooms, scraps of valuable tech, the very clothes off their backs, in exchange for a meager ration or a fleeting moment of safety. For the common citizen of the Imperium, the black market is not just a part of life. It is the only part of life that offers any semblance of hope. And it is in these places where the desperation is palpable, that the most insidious elements of the black market take root. It is here that the darkest of deals are struck, deals that involve the trade of human lives. Slaves, criminals, and even children are sometimes offered to the highest bidder, sold into the hands of cruel masters who see them only as expendable commodities. Whether it is for labor on some far-flung planet or as sacrifices to some dark cult, these lives are worth nothing in the eyes of the system. They are simply tools, discarded and traded when no longer needed. What is most chilling, however, is the realization that this cycle of exploitation, this underworld economy, is not some rogue element existing at the edges of imperial society. It is an integral part of the system. For the higher echelons of the Imperium, the black market is not simply a source of trade. It is a way of life. The most powerful in the Imperium turn a blind eye, for they know it serves their interests. When one part of the galaxy is starved of goods, the black market fills the gap. When one faction fails, another rises, trading in the darkness, offering solace in the form of forbidden knowledge, weapons, and power. The web of the black market stretches from the seedy corners of the hive worlds to the sprawling halls of the imperial palace itself. The bureaucrats, the administratum, the high-ranking officials, and the rogue traders who ply their craft through the stars. They are not above dealing in the shadows. In the eyes of the high lords of terror, it is all just another means to an end. The emperor's rule is absolute, but the true power lies in the shadows, in the transactions and whispers that cannot be traced to any one hand. And in the midst of all this, in the black market's tight grip on every corner of imperial life, the true cost is hidden away. For every trade made, for every deal struck, something precious is lost. A piece of humanity, a spark of hope, a shard of the Emperor's vision. The galaxy may continue to turn, the war may rage on, but the very foundation of the Imperium is being eroded piece by piece in the underworld, where loyalty means nothing and survival means everything. The black market is not just a place, it is a reflection of the Imperium itself. It thrives because the Imperium is broken. The Emperor may sit upon his golden throne, but his empire is dying. The black market feeds on that death, consuming all in its path, leaving only decay and emptiness in its wake. As long as the Imperium exists, so too will the black market, an indelible stain on the galaxy, a reminder that even the greatest empire in human history cannot escape the darkness that resides in its heart. In the labyrinthine corridors of the Imperium, where the machinery of the galaxy grinds onward with relentless efficiency, there exists a class of beings whose suffering goes unnoticed by the majority. They are neither human nor machine, yet they are both. They are the servitors, creatures trapped between life and death, stripped of their humanity, and bound to the will of the Emperor's empire through cold, unfeeling metal and the deepest of horrors. They are the hidden workers, the forgotten slaves who serve in silence, lost in the vastness of the Imperium's endless demands. A servitor's existence is one of agony, both physical and mental. Once human, they were stripped of their minds, their identities, their very souls, and replaced with the cold precision of machinery. These half-living, half-dead creatures are the tools of the Imperium, used for labor, combat, and maintenance in the countless war-torn sectors that populate the galaxy. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the priests of the machine god, see them as little more than instruments, and yet the truth is far darker. The servitors' silent screams are ignored. Their human memories buried deep within their rewired minds, but they are not entirely gone. Some servitors retain fragments of their former lives, brief flashes of who they once were, echoes of their lost selves. These memories are fleeting, twisted by the cruel transformation that has left them as little more than automatons. They may feel a flicker of terror when they hear their own name, or the distant warmth of a memory that seems just out of reach. But these moments are always fleeting, disappearing as quickly as they appear, leaving behind only the hollow sensation of something that was once real, but now feels like a dream. And yet, some of them fight back against this mechanical prison, their minds struggling to remember, to hold on to that last vestige of humanity before it is lost entirely. These servitors, though few, may be driven by a deep, gnawing sense of self-awareness, an awareness that they were once whole, that they were once free. The horror of that realization is almost too much to bear. In the fleeting moments when they remember their names, their families, their homes, they are confronted with the impossible truth. They are no longer who they were. they are no longer human, and that knowledge is a slow poison to their psyche. For most, however, the transformation is complete. Their memories, their identities have been erased by the cruel touch of the Mechanicus. They are now nothing more than tools of the Imperium, programmed to serve without question. They may be used to clean the vast halls of the Adeptus Custodes, or to maintain the endless, ancient machines that power the great manufactorums of the Imperium. Their purpose is clear, their will is not their own, and their lives, if they can even be called lives, are spent in unrelenting servitude. The physical changes that come with becoming a servitor are horrific in their own right. The transformation begins with the removal of limbs, organs, and flesh, replaced with metal. Limbs, robotic parts, and bionic implants. Eyes are replaced with cold mechanical optics, and skin is grafted with cold, unfeeling metal plating. The once warm touch of humanity is replaced with the cold embrace of a machine. They are no longer capable of feeling, no longer capable of thinking for themselves. Their entire existence is now a series of commands fed into their minds, a series of functions that dictate their every movement. The transformation is not just physical, though. It is a spiritual degradation, a loss of everything that made them human. Some, it is said, can still feel the loss deep within their souls, though they cannot express it. These individuals are often the most tragic, for their awareness of their degradation is a constant, gnawing torment. They remember the lives they once had, the freedom they once enjoyed, and they are left with nothing but the endless, grinding work of their new existence. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, this is merely the cost of progress. The more servitors they have, the more efficient the Imperium becomes. It is a cruel but necessary sacrifice, and the Mechanicus does not question it. For them, the servitors are nothing more than tools, means to an end. They see their existence as essential to the functioning of the Imperium. To them, the price of humanity is a small one to pay for the greater good of the galaxy. The service they provide is beyond measure, for it is the servitors who keep the great war machines running, who toil away in the manufactorums to produce the weapons and supplies that fuel the endless conflicts of the 41st millennium. And yet, for all the efficiency they bring, the servitors are nothing more than a reminder of the horrors that the Imperium is willing to inflict in the name of progress. In a galaxy beset by endless war, with chaos and corruption threatening to tear everything apart, the Adeptus Mechanicus see the transformation of men into machines as a necessary evil. They sacrifice the soul for the greater good, and in doing so, they condemn countless individuals to lives of servitude, to exist as nothing more than the husks of what they once were. But the truth is, not all servitors are made equal. Some are born of the most horrific circumstances, forced into their servitude by the whims of powerful figures within the Imperium. These are the most tragic of all, for they have known true freedom before their transformation. They were once soldiers, or workers, or even aristocrats, living lives that were not without hardship, but at least they were their own. The moment their transformation began, however, they ceased to be. They became nothing more than tools, their identities erased and their wills broken. The struggle between their fading humanity and their new mechanical existence is a war that never ends. A war waged in silence, in darkness, with no chance of victory. And then there are the others, the servitors who, whether by design or circumstance, have become more than their programming, It is a rare occurrence, but it happens from time to time. These servitors, often those who were once powerful leaders or psychically gifted individuals, can sometimes retain fragments of their former selves, their intellects untouched by the mechanicus' cruel alterations. They may even gain a perverse sense of power, a twisted understanding of the world that allows them to manipulate others. In these cases, the servitors become something far more dangerous than any simple tool. They become agents of control, capable of influencing events in ways that the mechanicus does not anticipate. It is a terrifying thought for a servitor, once nothing more than a mindless worker, can become an instrument of vengeance or manipulation when it remembers its former power. But such cases are rare, and the vast majority of servitors live their lives in silent servitude, their broken minds and bodies serving the Imperium's needs without ever questioning their fate. They are the forgotten ones, the invisible workers whose sacrifices go unnoticed by the very people they serve. They are the true victims of the Imperium's might, forever bound to the machinery of the galaxy, their humanity lost, their cries unheard. And so they toil day after day, their bodies worn, their spirits broken, their minds forgotten. They are the lost, the damned, the unseen. And though they may whisper their forgotten names to the cold, indifferent machinery of the Imperium, their cries will never be answered. The work of the servitor is relentless, cyclical, and thankless. It is not merely a matter of labor. It is an existence of utter subjugation. They are the invisible hands that keep the Imperium's war machine moving. The faceless workers who toil in the deepest, most dangerous corners of the galaxy. But within the mind of each servitor, buried beneath layers of metal and circuitry, lies a truth that even the Adeptus Mechanicus would prefer to forget. There was once life here. There was once a person with a name, with memories, with a future. These are the lost souls of the Imperium, swallowed by its cold, unfeeling bureaucracy, and their struggles are not so easily erased. In the vast manufactorums that stretch across entire planets, hundreds, thousands of servitors work tirelessly to keep the machines running, to maintain the flow of weaponry, armor, and tools needed to fuel the never-ending wars of the Imperium. The clang of metal on metal, the screech of grinding gears, the hum of energy coursing through miles of power lines. These are the sounds that fill the air, and the servitors are the silent, mechanical witnesses to it all. They work in tandem with the machines, their movements synchronized with the grind of pistons, their eyes fixed on the endless tasks laid before them. But what is it like, this existence? What does it mean to be a servitor, to live a life of such unrelenting monotony and pain? In the cold, sterile environments of the manufactorums, there is no room for emotion. There is no place for grief, for regret, for hope. A servitor has only one function: to work and to serve. If they fail, if they malfunction, they are discarded. Their mechanical bodies are thrown aside like broken tools, their consciousness erased completely, as if they never existed. And yet, in the darkest corners of their minds, there remains a flicker, a whisper of something more, a memory that they cannot quite grasp, a feeling that they cannot quite understand. It is here, in the depths of their servitude, that the tragedy of the servitor becomes most apparent. In the middle of their relentless toil, in the midst of the ever-churning machine, a servitor may experience moments of clarity. They may, for a fleeting instant, remember the warmth of the sun on their face, the laughter of a loved one, the simple pleasure of breathing freely. But these moments are brief, fragile, and always fleeting. The memories slip away as soon as they surface, crushed beneath the weight of the mechanical mind that has replaced their own. For those who were once human, soldiers, civilians, even aristocrats, the transformation into a servitor is a death of self. The memories that they once held dear are stolen from them, piece by piece, until nothing is left but the empty shell of a machine. They are no longer human, no longer individuals. They are no more than tools, pieces of machinery designed to perform a single function. Their humanity is a distant echo, drowned out by the ceaseless grind of gears, the cold embrace of metal, and the relentless demands of the Imperium. But the most heartbreaking aspect of a servitor's existence is the sense of helplessness that comes with it. Even if they can remember who they once were, even if they can feel the echo of their lost humanity, there is nothing they can do. They are bound by chains of metal and circuitry, by the cruel programming that has replaced their thoughts. They are forced to work, to serve, to exist as mere extensions of the machine. And in this servitude, they are erased bit by bit until there is nothing left but a hollow shell that moves and obeys. Some may find solace in the knowledge that their work serves the Imperium, that they are part of something greater than themselves. But for most, the reality of their existence is much darker. They are discarded when they are no longer useful, their bodies stripped of their parts and their minds rust. They are nothing more than tools, expendable, replaceable, and ultimately forgotten. And as they labor, day after day, under the relentless rule of the Adeptus Mechanicus, they are haunted by the faintest traces of who they once were. Their memories may be lost, but their humanity is not so easily erased. But what if there was a way to break free? What if, for a brief moment, a servitor could regain their senses, could remember who they were before the transformation? This is a dream, of course, a fantasy that will never come to pass. The Adeptus Mechanicus would never allow it. The power they wield over these broken souls is absolute. They are the keepers of the machines, and the servitors are nothing more than cogs in the grand, eternal clockwork of the Imperium. But still, the question lingers. What if, for just one fleeting moment, the servitors could stand, as they once did, free and whole? The servitor's plight is not just a story of the loss of humanity. It is a story of the loss of hope. In the cold, sterile halls of the manufactorums, in the forgotten recesses of war-torn planets, the servitors exist in a world where hope is a luxury they can never afford. There is no room for dreams, for aspirations, for anything but the grind of survival. The Imperium may claim to be the protector of humanity, but it is the servitors, the forgotten souls, the lost ones who bear the true weight of its tyranny. They are the ones who carry the burden of a galaxy at war, the ones who endure the endless cycle of suffering and degradation that is the true cost of the Emperor's empire. And so the servitors continue their endless toil, their metal limbs moving in perfect synchronization with the machines they serve. They do not stop, do not rest, for there is no escape from the work that has been thrust upon them. They are the silent, unseen workers who keep the Imperium alive, and yet they are the ones who are truly dead. Their existence is one of despair, of pain, of relentless, unceasing labor, with no end in sight. And though the galaxy may continue to turn, and the wars of the Imperium rage on, the servitors, Those lost souls who once knew the warmth of life remain trapped in the cold, mechanical grip of their endless servitude. The glittering halls of the imperial palace are only the beginning. Beneath the gilded towers, beyond the walls of the high spires, lies the true heart of the Imperium. A heart that beats with the frantic desperation of those who believe themselves safe, but are not. The noble houses of the Imperium, those blessed with wealth and power, live in a world of opulence and privilege, insulated from the horrors of the galaxy below. But the truth is far darker than the golden facades would suggest. Their wealth, their influence, their very survival are constantly threatened by forces they cannot control. And it is this paranoia, this ever-present fear of losing their place in the galaxy that drives them to desperate measures. The lives of the elite are far from the picture of comfort they project. The nobility of the Imperium must constantly strive to maintain their tenuous grip on power, for there is always someone waiting in the shadows, watching, scheming, and plotting for their downfall. The threats they face are not just external, but internal. Factions within the nobility itself vie for power, for dominance, and for the opportunity to usurp the wealth and status of their rivals. The scheming of these families is not confined to the halls of their estates. It spills into the streets, into the corridors of power, and into the very fabric of the Imperium. Every alliance is fragile, every bond suspect, and no one is safe from the whisper of treachery. Behind every gilded door, behind every towering statue of the emperor, there is a constant, gnawing fear. The nobility of the Imperium are not the true rulers of the galaxy. They may hold wealth, they may control vast armies, but their authority is only granted to them by the emperor's will. And that will is fickle, unyielding, and ever-shifting. The elite may live in palaces and estates surrounded by luxury, but their every move is watched, their every word scrutinized by the unseen eyes of the Imperium's many factions. Even those who believe themselves untouchable are often the most vulnerable. For in a galaxy as brutal and unforgiving as the 41st millennium, nothing lasts forever. For the noble houses, the struggle for survival is constant. They may have armies at their disposal, fleets that can annihilate entire worlds, but these are not the tools they fear the most. The true threat is the insidious game of politics. The invisible forces that pull at their strings, manipulating them, using their own greed, fear, and ambition to orchestrate their downfall. The Imperium's elite are puppets, trapped in a dance of power that they cannot control. Every deal they make, every alliance they forge is fraught with risk. Betrayal lurks at every corner, and even the smallest misstep can lead to their ruin. To maintain their status, the nobility must go to extraordinary lengths. They must make sacrifices, compromise their principles, and sometimes even betray their own kin. The price of power is steep, and the elite of the Imperium pay it gladly. But as the galaxy continues its descent into chaos, as the forces of the warp grow ever more insistent, the price becomes higher and higher. The nobility must constantly seek new ways to secure their place in the galaxy. It is not enough to rule. They must remain in power at any cost. In the darkened corners of their estates, in the hidden chambers of their grand mansions, the elite turn to the black market, to illicit deals and forbidden technologies, to secure their hold on power. The Emperor's law may govern the galaxy, but in the underworld, it is a different set of rules that applies. Here, in the shadows, The elite are free to make the kinds of deals that would be unthinkable in the light of day. The black market offers them the resources they need to stay ahead of their rivals, to maintain their vast armies, and to secure the favor of the Imperium's many factions. But these deals come with a price that, for some, proves too high. One need not look far to see the consequences of such desperation. Entire sectors of the Imperium's elite are consumed by the very black markets they once relied upon. The aristocracy becomes addicted to the forbidden knowledge and power that these underground dealings provide. And as they become more deeply entrenched in the web of corruption, they lose themselves. The line between what is acceptable and what is not becomes blurred, and the once noble houses find themselves mired in the same moral decay they once sought to avoid. What begins as a simple transaction, a weapon, a secret, a whispered favor, quickly grows into something far more dangerous. The noble houses find themselves beholden to powers they cannot comprehend, manipulated by forces beyond their control. Once, these houses ruled with the blessing of the emperor's will, but now they are caught in the tangled web of their own ambitions. They are no longer the masters of their own fate. In their pursuit of power, they have made deals with the very forces that threaten to tear the Imperium apart. These deals come with consequences, of course. The black market, with all its seductive promises, offers more than just material gain. It offers the opportunity to barter with forbidden forces, to touch the edges of the warp, to negotiate with the demonic entities that haunt the corners of the galaxy. And though the Imperium's elite may turn a blind eye to the dangers of such dealings, they cannot escape the consequences. Those who dabble too deeply in the black market risk losing their souls, their minds, and their very existence. But the desperation of the elite is not easily quelled. They will sacrifice whatever it takes to stay in power, to maintain their position in the galaxy's brutal game. The nobility may turn to the black market, they may make deals with the forces of chaos, but they will never be free from the fear that lurks behind every decision, every transaction. The struggle for survival is endless, and even the wealthiest, most powerful families of the Imperium are never truly safe. It is this desperation that defines the true nature of the Imperium's elite. They are not the untouchable rulers they would like to believe themselves to be. They are as vulnerable as the common man, if not more so. Their wealth, their power, their influence, all of it is fleeting, constantly threatened by the very system they have built. In their attempts to secure their position, they have lost more than they can ever gain. The very act of striving for power has consumed them, and in the end, they are no better than the desperate souls they look down upon. For all their wealth, for all their cunning, the elite of the Imperium are as lost as anyone else. They are trapped in a cycle of corruption, greed, and ambition. A cycle that will never end. And no matter how high they rise, no matter how much power they acquire, they will always be afraid. The fear of losing everything, of falling from grace, is a weight that no amount of gold or influence can ever lift. In the end, the desperation of the Zast Imperium's elite is a reflection of the empire itself. An empire built on shifting sands, held together by the fragile illusion of power. It is an empire that may one day collapse under the weight of its own corruption, and those who have climbed to the highest heights will find themselves just as lost, just as vulnerable, as those at the lowest depths. The paranoia of the Imperium's elite extends far beyond the confines of their gilded estates and luxurious spires. It is a gnawing, unrelenting fear that infects every facet of their lives. They know that in a galaxy as vast and cruel as the 41st millennium, there is no such thing as true safety. Even the Emperor's light, though ever burning, cannot protect them from the shadows that creep across their worlds. And so the elite live their lives not only with a sense of entitlement, but with an overwhelming awareness of the danger lurking just beyond their reach. Every whispered word, every clandestine meeting in the dark corners of their palatial chambers is charged with suspicion. The elite trust no one, not even those within their own ranks. For in a galaxy ruled by the Emperor's iron will, there is always someone hungry for power, always someone waiting to take what is not theirs. In this cutthroat world, alliances are forged and broken as easily as the flicker of a candle's flame, and those who cannot adapt are swiftly consumed. The stakes are high, and the consequences of failure are catastrophic. To navigate this world, the elite must rely on an intricate network of spies, informants, and shadowy figures who deal in secrets. They must be aware of every threat, every potential challenger that may rise to take their place. In the imperial court, in the darkened chambers of the nobility, rumors are worth their weight in gold. Information is power, and those who possess it can control the fate of entire worlds. To be unaware, to be out of the loop, is to invite disaster. For even the smallest misstep, a single unguarded moment could lead to betrayal, assassination, or worse. This web of deception is not limited to the elite alone. It stretches into every aspect of imperial life, infecting even the most seemingly innocuous of interactions. The common man, the soldier, the worker in the manufactorum, all of them are part of this vast, insidious network. The noble houses may rule from their spires, but the hands of the servants, the slaves, and the soldiers reach into the depths of the Imperium's power. For them, survival is a constant game of subtle manipulation, and they too must play their part in maintaining the delicate balance of the empire. Those who cannot play the game, those who cannot adapt, are discarded without a second thought. It is this constant fear, this endless struggle to maintain control, that defines the Imperium's elite. They are not gods, despite their wealth and status. They are not untouchable, nor are they immune to the dangers that lurk at every corner. They are human, just like the rest of the Imperium, and they are as vulnerable as any commoner. The empire they cling to so desperately is not built on the strength of their bloodlines, nor on the divine protection of the Emperor. It is built on fear. Fear of losing power, fear of being consumed by the very forces they seek to control. In their desperation, the elite turn to whatever means they can to secure their position. Some resort to assassination, using their vast networks of mercenaries and spies to eliminate rivals before they can rise to challenge them. Others turn to forbidden knowledge, to arcane technologies that allow them to extend their power, to cheat death itself. They delve into the darkest corners of the Imperium, seeking anything that might give them an edge in the unrelenting power struggle that defines their existence. These dangerous paths lead many down a dark road, one from which they cannot return. For the elite, the desire for power is an addiction, a hunger that cannot be sated no matter how far they fall. The whispers of chaos, those dark forces that exist at the edges of the known galaxy, also make their way into the corridors of power. The corrupting allure of the warp, the promise of untold power and knowledge, is too tempting for some to resist. The elite know that the Emperor's light is fickle, that their hold on power is fragile, and the whispers of the dark gods speak to them in their moments of weakness. There are always those willing to sell their soul for the promise of power, and they are found in the highest echelons of imperial society. The nobles who fall to chaos are often the most dangerous, for they have the resources, the influence, and the power to sow chaos on a scale that few can comprehend. Yet, even those who resist the call of the warp find themselves constantly battling internal forces. The paranoia that consumes the elite only grows as their power increases. They are haunted by the fear of betrayal, of rebellion, and of being replaced by someone younger, more ambitious, more ruthless. As they grow older, their power becomes increasingly fragile, and they are forced to make increasingly desperate choices in order to preserve their position. These choices, while initially small, eventually lead to the downfall. The desperation to hold on to power becomes all-consuming, and they lose sight of everything that once made them human. In the end, the story of the Imperium's elite is a tragic one. They have built their power on a foundation of fear, distrust, and betrayal, and in doing so, they have condemned themselves to a life of constant struggle. They are not the masters of the galaxy, as they would like to believe. They are simply pawns in a far greater game, one that they cannot control. No matter how high they rise, no matter how much wealth and power they amass, they are always vulnerable to the forces that swirl around them. Their wealth is temporary, their influence fleeting, and their power ultimately illusory. The greater the power they gain, the greater the danger they face. It is a delicate dance, a dance that will, in the end, claim them all. As the Imperium crumbles beneath the weight of its own ambition, the elite find themselves struggling to maintain the very empire that they have built. The greater the desperation, the greater the price they are willing to pay. In their quest for power, they have lost everything that made them truly human. And when the empire finally collapses, as it inevitably will, it will be these very elites who will be the first to fall. Not because they are weak, but because they have become too consumed by their own fear and ambition to see the truth. The elites may rule the galaxy now, but their reign is fragile, held together only by the most tenuous of threads. And when those threads finally snap, when the last vestiges of the Imperium's power crumble, they will be left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own desperation. In the deepest corners of the Imperium, where the light of the Emperor struggles to break through the oppressive darkness, there exists a force older than the Empire itself. It is a force that whispers to those who are vulnerable, to those who are desperate, and to those who seek power at any cost. These whispers come not from the Emperor, not from the light of the Astronomicon, but from the very heart of the warp itself, from the dark gods who dwell within its twisting, eternal currents. Chaos. The forces of chaos are ever present, lurking at the edges of reality, waiting for a crack in the Imperium's defenses. They are not a distant threat, not something that can be ignored or forgotten. No, the influence of the dark gods is all around, woven into the very fabric of the galaxy. It is an insidious presence, creeping into the hearts of men, corrupting their minds, and pulling at the very soul of the Imperium. The Emperor's light may shine brightly, but the shadows of chaos are always there, threatening to swallow it whole. For the common citizen, the whisper of chaos is a distant thing, an echo of a nightmare, something to fear but never fully understand. But for the elite, for those in positions of power, the influence of the dark gods is much closer, much more dangerous. They know that the Imperium is fragile, that the Emperor's reign is built on a shaky foundation, and in their desperation to maintain their power, some turn to chaos. These are the lost souls, those who are willing to forsake everything, their humanity, their loyalty, their very soul, for the promise of power that the dark gods offer. To understand the pull of chaos, one must first understand the nature of the warp itself. The warp is a realm of pure emotion, of raw, untamed energy that is shaped by the thoughts, desires, and fears of all those who exist in the material universe. It is a place where time and space are fluid, where the boundaries of reality itself break down. And it is here that the dark gods of chaos dwell, their power drawn from the emotions of mortals. Khorne, the bloodthirsty god of war and slaughter. Nurgle, the decaying god of plague and despair. Tzeentch, the manipulative god of change and secrets, and Slaanesh, the hedonistic god of excess and pleasure. Each of these gods feeds off the emotions of mortals, the anger, the fear, the pain, the joy. All of it fuels the warp and strengthens their grip on the galaxy. To those who are disillusioned with the Imperium, to those who have lost faith in the Emperor's eternal rule, the dark gods offer a seductive alternative. They offer power without limits, freedom from the oppressive yoke of the Imperium's endless bureaucracy, and the promise of a world where they can reshape reality to their own desires. For the ambitious, the disillusioned, and the broken, the temptation of chaos is all but irresistible. In the court of the Imperium's elite, whispers of the dark gods begin to seep through the cracks. They come not as a sudden explosion, but as a subtle whisper, a promise that seems too good to ignore. The whispers begin as small things: a book of forbidden knowledge, an occult artifact, an ancient relic that hums with strange power. These objects find their way into the hands of those who are willing to seek them out, willing to listen to the promises that chaos offers. A single artifact, a single whisper, is often all it takes to open the door to damnation. And once that door is opened, it is almost impossible to close. The first step down the path of chaos is often the most dangerous, for it is here that the individual begins to question everything they once held dear. The Emperor, once a god of light and purity, now seems distant, even cruel. The Imperium, once a bastion of order, now seems like a prison, an oppressive force that stifles the potential of those who serve it. And so, in their desperation, the disillusioned turn to chaos, seeking a new path, a new purpose, one where they are free to embrace their desires, their flaws, and their deepest, darkest impulses. But the price of this freedom is high. The dark gods do not offer power for free. They demand loyalty, sacrifice, and devotion. They feed on the souls of their followers, slowly twisting them into something unrecognizable, something other. The promises they offer are hollow. They are nothing more than illusions, a way to enslave those who would dare to embrace them. To serve chaos is to lose oneself, to become a puppet in the hands of forces that care nothing for the individual. The corrupting touch of the warp warps the mind, the body, and the soul. The further one falls into the grasp of chaos, the harder it becomes to return. The more one embraces the dark gods, the more one loses their humanity. In the highest echelons of imperial society, This fall into chaos is often masked by the trappings of wealth and power. The elite are masters of manipulation, and they know how to hide their true allegiances behind a facade of servility and respectability. The high lords of the Imperium, the nobles and generals who command vast armies and control entire sectors, often have their hands stained with the blood of their enemies. But many also dabble in the dark arts of the warp, seeking forbidden power that the Imperium cannot offer. These are the true dangers. The leaders who betray the Emperor's cause and turn to chaos for their own gain. They are the ones who, in their quest for power, have sold their souls to the warp. It is not just the nobles, however, who are drawn to chaos. The common man, the soldier, the worker in the manufactorum, they too can be seduced by the promises of the dark gods. The desperation of those who live in the underbelly of the Imperium, in the shadow of a galaxy constantly at war, makes them easy prey for the forces of chaos. When the Emperor seems distant, when the light of the Imperium is but a flickering candle in the void, the promise of power, of change, is a beacon that shines brighter than any faith. For the soldiers of the Astra Militarum, the ranks of the Imperial Guard, the whispers of chaos are a constant presence. They are the cannon fodder of the Imperium, the ones sent to die in the name of an emperor they may never see. And in the darkness of battle, amidst the screams of their comrades and the endless tide of Xenos and traitors, many find themselves drawn to the power of the warp. They may not consciously embrace it at first, but when the promise of victory, of survival, is dangled before them, they are willing to do anything to secure it. The first taste of that power, a blessing from one of the dark gods, a whisper in the mind, a strange vision in the warp, is enough to send them down the path of no return. For the elite and the common alike, the pull of chaos is undeniable. It is a dark, seductive force that preys on the weaknesses of the Imperium, offering what it cannot provide: freedom, power, and an escape from the crushing weight of an unfeeling, uncaring galaxy. But the price is steep, and once one has taken that first step into the void, there is no going back. As the Imperium teeters on the brink of collapse, the forces of chaos grow ever more insistent. They whisper to the elite, to the desperate, to the broken. They promise them power beyond their wildest dreams, but at what cost? The fabric of the Imperium is fraying, and the dark gods are waiting, hungry, for those who would abandon the Emperor's light and fall into their grasp. And so, the whispers of chaos continue, calling to those who are willing to listen. In the end, it is not the armies of Xenos, nor the heretical armies of traitors that will bring about the Imperium's fall. It is the slow, insidious corruption from within, the betrayal of those who should have been its defenders, and the seduction of those who should have never wavered. Chaos will wait, as it always has, and when the time comes, it will claim the souls of the Imperium's elite as its own. The Imperium of man, vast and mighty, seems to stretch across the stars as an indomitable force built upon the unyielding will of the Emperor and his loyal subjects. The grandeur of the Imperial Palace, the ever-expanding reach of the Astra Militarum, the glorious battles fought in his name. These are the symbols of a powerful, unshakable empire. And yet, beneath this monumental facade, the cracks are becoming ever more apparent. The foundation that supports this galaxy-spanning empire is fragile. And as the years stretch on, it becomes increasingly clear that the forces that once held the Imperium together may no longer be enough. The stories of the past, of the Emperor's golden age, of the triumphs of the Great Crusade, of the glory of mankind's expansion across the stars, have been obscured by centuries of war, decay, and suffering. The galaxy is no longer a place of hope for mankind, but a brutal battleground, rife with despair, corruption, and chaos. What was once a shining beacon of unity and purpose has become an empire of broken promises and shattered ideals. And as the age of the Imperium wears on, it becomes more and more apparent that there may be no way to reverse its inevitable decline. For those who cling to the Emperor's light, for those who still believe in the noble ideals of the Imperium, the future appears bleak. The enemy is not just the hordes of Xenos or the forces of chaos. The enemy is within. The bureaucracy of the Imperium, bloated and corrupt, has become a labyrinth of inefficiency, where the right hand does not know what the left is doing. The institutions that were once designed to safeguard humanity now serve only to perpetuate the endless cycles of suffering and war. It is a system that devours its own, one where the sacrifices of the many are made in vain, as the ruling elite squabble over petty power and wealth while the galaxy burns. And it is not just the institutions of power that are failing. The people of the Imperium, those who live in the hives, in the mining colonies, in the war-torn worlds on the edge of imperial space, are beginning to question the legitimacy of the Emperor's rule. Once, they fought and died with unwavering faith in the Imperium's cause, believing that the sacrifices would lead to a better future for humanity. But now, they are beginning to realize that their lives are nothing more than pawns in a grand game, a game played by elites who care little for the struggles of the common man. The once unshakable faith in the Emperor is faltering, and with it, the unity that once held the Imperium together. The whispers of discontent are growing louder. Rebellions, uprisings, and revolts are becoming more frequent, spreading like wildfire across the Imperium's most vulnerable sectors. The signs are all too clear. The Empire is collapsing under its own weight, its foundations crumbling. The fear that once drove the Imperium's citizens to accept their suffering has begun to give way to anger, to frustration, and to defiance. And in the shadows, the forces of chaos watch with anticipation, waiting for the right moment to strike. But even more insidious than the external threats to the Imperium are the cracks within its very soul. The Emperor, once the guiding light of humanity, is now little more than a relic, a decaying god sitting on his golden throne, his mind shattered by the burdens of millennia of war. He is no longer the unifying force he once was. The once divine ruler of mankind is a broken figure, his soul trapped in a perpetual state of torment, unable to guide or protect his people. The ecclesiarchy, the imperial cult that venerates the emperor as a living god, has become an institution of zealotry and dogma, its followers blind to the harsh realities of the galaxy. They continue to worship a god that no longer exists, perpetuating the myth of the emperor's divine will, while the Imperium crumbles around them. And yet, the Imperium continues to march forward, driven by inertia, by tradition, by the weight of its own history. The soldiers of the Astra Militarum continue to die in endless waves, their sacrifices providing no answers, no closure, no respite. The Inquisition, once the defenders of humanity's purity, has become a paranoid, self-serving organization, more concerned with eliminating perceived threats to its power than with the survival of the Imperium itself. The Adeptus Mechanicus, once the keepers of knowledge and technology, has become obsessed with maintaining the status quo, hoarding knowledge and resources while the galaxy burns. The question that looms over all of this is, for how long can the Imperium survive? Can an empire so deeply entrenched in corruption, so riddled with inefficiency and infighting, truly endure the trials that are yet to come? Or is it simply a matter of time before it collapses under the weight of its own failures? As the future of the Imperium hangs in the balance, there are those who still cling to the hope that salvation is possible. Some believe that the Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, still watches over humanity, even in his broken state. Some believe that there are forces within the Imperium that can still restore it to its former glory. But these voices grow quieter with each passing day, drowned out by the rising tide of despair and chaos. Others, however, have begun to question whether the Imperium should be saved at all. There are those who believe that the galaxy would be better off without the Emperor, without the Imperium's endless wars, without the blind obedience to a broken and decaying system. These voices, often whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy, call for change, for revolution, for something new. Whether they are driven by a desire for freedom or by the promise of power, their presence marks a turning point in the history of humanity. The old order, they say, must be destroyed to make way for something new, something better. But what is the alternative? The forces of chaos wait in the wings, ever hungry for the Imperium's soul. The Xeno species, some of whom have bided their time for centuries, are also growing stronger, watching as the once unified human empire fractures and weakens. The Orcs, the Tyranids, the Aeldari, all of these forces wait, each hoping to claim their own piece of the Imperium's shattered remains. In a galaxy so full of danger, is there truly any hope for the future? Or is the Imperium doomed to fall, its final death throes marking the end of humanity's great experiment? As the Emperor sits in his eternal agony, as the stars burn and the galaxy spins ever closer to chaos, one thing is certain. The future of the Imperium is uncertain. Its path is dark and its fate unknown. And even the most stalwart defenders cannot say for certain whether humanity will emerge from the ashes of the Imperium stronger or weaker. What is clear, however, is that the journey toward whatever future awaits is one fraught with unimaginable peril. And as the galaxy turns, the final veil of the Imperium, that illusion of unity, of unshakable strength, may very well be torn asunder, revealing a future no one could have foreseen. As the galaxy continues its inexorable drift toward chaos, the very notion of what it means to be human within the Imperium is being redefined. Once, humanity was united under the banner of the Emperor, standing tall against the threats of the universe, its destiny bound by the Emperor's vision. But the Golden Age is long gone. The Emperor, in his eternal agony, can no longer serve as the beacon of hope for the Imperium's citizens. His light, once a source of strength, now flickers faintly, a mere shadow of the man he once was. The vast machine of the Imperium continues to churn, but its gears are rusted, its movements sluggish. The Grand Crusade, once meant to unite the galaxy in the Emperor's name, has devolved into endless war, fought on countless worlds with no resolution in sight. The struggle for survival, for meaning in a galaxy ruled by war, has led many to question the very foundation of the Imperium. The nobility, once the unquestioned rulers, now find themselves beset by infighting, rebellion, and the growing realization that their power is illusory, maintained only through fear and deceit. The High Lords of Terra, those who control the vast machinery of the Imperium, are no longer seen as infallible. The divine image of the emperor, once worshipped as a god, now seems increasingly distant and irrelevant to those struggling to survive in the harshest corners of the galaxy. The faith that once united the Imperium is eroding, replaced by fear, doubt, and uncertainty. The Imperium's people no longer fight for the Emperor's glory, but for their own survival, a survival threatened not just by the Xenos or chaos, but by their own corrupt system. The Imperial cult, though still deeply entrenched, is no longer the unifying force it once was. The Emperor's true power, once seen as the indomitable strength of mankind, is now the very thing that holds the Imperium in its death throes. His shattered body, kept alive by the machinery of the Golden Throne, is a symbol of the very rot that permeates the Imperium. As the faith of the people falters, the ecclesiarchy clings to its dogma, its priests preaching that the Emperor's suffering is a necessary sacrifice for the survival of mankind. But these sermons, once filled with hope and conviction, now ring hollow. The Emperor cannot lead his people, his mind is lost, and his body is a prison. His will no longer guides the Imperium. It is the factions, the individuals hungry for power, who dictate the course of events. And as the galaxy spins toward chaos, more and more voices ask, why should mankind continue to follow a god who has abandoned them? There are some who still believe that the Emperor will return, that his mind will somehow be freed from the Golden Throne, and he will once again lead humanity to greatness. But these are mere whispers, drowned out by the growing sense of desperation that pervades the Imperium. The hope for his return has become a myth, a story told to children, a comforting lie for those unable or unwilling to face the truth. The reality is that the Emperor is gone, and he is not coming back. But in the void left by his absence, something else is growing. The forces of chaos ever present in the shadows have begun to rise again. The dark gods, once thought to be on the fringes of the galaxy, now sense an opportunity. The Imperium's disarray, its internal rot, provides the perfect opportunity for the dark powers of the warp to spread their influence. The cracks in the Imperium's foundation are widening, and chaos is waiting for the final collapse. It is not just the armies of chaos that threaten the Imperium, but the very corruption that lurks in the hearts of its people. The whispers of the warp are all around them, feeding on their fear, their hatred, and their desire for power. As the Imperium's light dims, the forces of chaos grow stronger, and the final veil that has shielded humanity from the horrors of the warp is slowly being torn away. The possibility of a new order, a new form of governance, is becoming more real. The dream of a unified Imperium, ruled by the Emperor's will, seems increasingly out of reach. In its place, new ideas are beginning to take root. Some call for a revolution, for a change in the very structure of the Imperium, one that breaks free from the grip of the ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the other ruling factions that have corrupted the system. These voices, though few, are growing louder, calling for the creation of a new order, one where the people of the Imperium are not shackled by the oppressive, decaying machinery of the old empire. Others, however, see this as an opportunity for personal gain. These individuals, often members of the nobility or high-ranking officials, are not interested in reform or the salvation of the Imperium. They see the galaxy's unraveling as an opportunity to seize power for themselves, to create their own empires within the crumbling remains of the Imperium. The galaxy is vast, and as the Imperium weakens, the opportunity for self-serving ambition becomes too great to resist. These factions are willing to do whatever it takes to maintain their control. Whether that means making deals with chaos, forging alliances with Xenos, or eliminating their rivals with ruthless efficiency. For them, the collapse of the Imperium is not a tragedy, but a chance to seize power from the ashes. But even as the forces of chaos rise and the old order crumbles, there are still those who resist. The true defenders of the Imperium, those who still believe in its ideals, continue to fight even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Astra Militarum, the Adeptus Astartes, the Inquisition. These factions continue to battle for the survival of the Imperium, though they are increasingly outmatched by the forces of the galaxy. The Emperor may no longer lead them, but they still hold his banner high. For them, the war is not about personal power or survival. It is about duty, about protecting humanity from the darkness that threatens to consume it. They fight because they have no other choice, because the fate of the galaxy rests in their hands. The Imperium, though broken, is not yet defeated. Its people still fight, its armies still march, and its leaders still cling to the hope that there is a future worth saving. But the question remains, for how long? The galaxy grows darker by the day, and the forces of chaos are closing in. The Imperium's time may be coming to an end, but humanity's story is far from over. Whether the future lies in the flames of a new empire, under the yoke of chaos, or in the ashes of the old, only time will tell. The final veil is closing, and humanity stands on the brink of a new, uncertain future. As the future of the Imperium unfolds before them, its inhabitants are drawn into a paradoxical reality. They are bound by their own survival instincts, yet suffocated by the very systems that once sustained them. In the deepest reaches of the galaxy, humanity's fight for survival is no longer a simple battle against external threats. No longer merely a clash of arms against alien hordes or the insidious forces of chaos. The war has become something more. It is a struggle for the very soul of the Imperium. A battle waged not just with weapons, but with ideology, with belief, and with the ideals that once bound the galaxy together. The end of the Imperium does not come with a single decisive event. It is not a moment of sudden collapse, but a slow, creeping disintegration, a falling apart of the fabric of human civilization, a slow erosion of everything the Imperium once stood for. The cracks in the foundation are deepening, but the final fall is still obscured by a veil of hope, an unwillingness to accept the reality of their situation. The people of the Imperium, even in their darkest hours, refuse to let go of the ideals of the past, even as those ideals slip further from their grasp. The Emperor, though a shadow of his former self, remains the central figure in the minds of millions. His name is invoked in prayer. His image is etched on every wall, and his once glorious vision is invoked to justify every act of cruelty, every unjust war, every sacrifice made in his name. But the Emperor is no longer the guiding light of humanity. He is a decaying god, a corpse on a throne, held together by the machinery of the Golden Throne. He is the symbol of a lost age, an age that can never return. And as the years stretch on, as the galaxy grows darker and more fragmented, there are fewer and fewer who remember what the Imperium was meant to be. The future of mankind, it seems, is no longer about progress or glory, but about survival. Survival at any cost. Those who cling to the old ideals, those who still believe in the Emperor's vision, are finding themselves increasingly isolated in a galaxy that no longer shares their hope. In the cities and the manufactorums, in the war-torn worlds that litter the edges of the Imperium, there are those who still hold on to the belief that humanity can rise above its current state, that the Imperium can be restored to its former glory. They are the dreamers, the believers, the ones who refuse to accept that the end is near. They fight not just for survival, but for the future. They march in the name of the Emperor, they defend the remnants of the Imperium, and they hold fast to the hope that one day a savior will arise to guide humanity once again. For them, the Imperium is not just a place, but a symbol, a beacon of what humanity can achieve when united under a single purpose. But these voices are growing quieter. As the Imperium crumbles, the sense of hope that once bound humanity together is fading. It is not just the Xenos or the forces of chaos that threaten the galaxy. It is the sheer weight of time, of centuries of war and decay that has worn away the very soul of the Imperium. The Emperor may still sit on his throne, but his mind is lost. His will is broken, and his power is fading. The Imperium is no longer the shining example of mankind's potential. It is a relic, a broken empire, held together by fear and superstition, but offering no answers to the darkness that encroaches. And yet, even in this twilight, there are those who still see the Imperium's demise as something inevitable, something that cannot be avoided. The forces of chaos, ever patient, ever hungry, watch as the galaxy's greatest empire falters. The whispers of the dark. Gods are growing louder, more insistent. Where once the Imperium stood as a beacon of hope for humanity, it now stands as a target for the forces of chaos, waiting for the right moment to strike. The very foundation of the Imperium, its institutions, its armies, its people, have been corrupted. The dark gods see in the Imperium not a rival, but an opportunity to claim the souls of humanity once and for all. But there are still those who resist. The soldiers of the Astra Militarum, though outmatched and outgunned, continue to fight. The Adeptus Astartes, the last of the Emperor's finest, continue to hold the line against the forces of chaos, even as their numbers dwindle. The Inquisition, though fractured and divided, still seeks to root out heresy wherever it may arise. There is still a small flame of defiance in the hearts of those who believe that the Imperium can be saved, or at the very least, that humanity must continue to fight, even in the face of certain defeat. But their battle is a losing one. The forces arrayed against them are too great, the corruption too widespread. Even within the Imperium's most elite ranks, the signs of decay are evident. The nobles and the high-ranking officials who once ruled with an iron grip are no longer the masters they once were. They are fractured, divided by ambition, greed, and the very forces of chaos that they once feared. The power struggles that riddle the nobility only serve to weaken the Imperium further. In the face of such chaos and division, it is unclear whether there is anything left to preserve. Those who still fight for the Imperium, for the Emperor, do so out of a sense of duty, out of a deep, unwavering belief that the Imperium is worth saving. But these voices are becoming fewer, drowned out by the rising tide of chaos and rebellion. And yet, despite the overwhelming darkness, there is still a glimmer of something that refuses to die. It is the will to survive. Even in the face of certain destruction, the people of the Imperium continue to fight. They continue to hold on, not because they believe they can win, but because they have no other choice. The war may be lost, the empire may be doomed, but the spirit of humanity remains, stubborn and unyielding. Perhaps it is this very stubbornness, this refusal to accept defeat, that will carry humanity through the final collapse of the Imperium. The end of the Imperium may mark the end of an age, but it does not mark the end of humanity. The future of mankind lies beyond the Imperium. In the ruins of the past, in the ashes of a broken empire, the final veil is falling. But beyond it, there is something else. Whether it is the rise of a new order, a new empire, or the fall of humanity into the grip of chaos, only time will tell. The Imperium may die, but mankind's story is far from over. The future is uncertain, but it is the future of humanity. And for the first time in millennia, humanity may have the chance to choose its own fate. The end.